Grand Rising, everyone. It's Shay Seeking, and I'm back with another part to this whole Adams Family series, and we're talking about who is it? Francis Adams at this point. Okay, so I was trying to show you guys in the other video. I think this is going to be a separate one. Yeah, we'll just do part 2 on this one. So we're talking about how we're looking in the book of Sirach, or Sarah, okay, in my eyes. And we were talking about the whole thing about one that, let's see if we can pull it back up. Let's see if we can pull it back up. Okay. See if we can go all the way back over. Okay. So we're talking about how in this book, okay, there's some kind of flash flood going on, and I'm in my sunroom right now, so just, bear with me. So we're talking about this whole thing where it says Jesus, hold on one second. Sorry about that. So, we're talking about this whole portion of the book where it says this is the prologue to wisdom. And on this channel, we like to use wisdom, knowledge, discernment, common sense, and all those good old things. We like to go ahead and remove religion and all the other dogma from the text and just look at what the text is actually saying. And we don't like to just read it on the surface. We like to pull the layers off like an onion to get to the, thick of it. So what we're saying is we're having a theory on this channel that the Bible is not as old as they may have us think it is, that we may actually be talking about the old world here in America and the nation, the foreign nation or entity that is here ruling things in our land and have been sucking things from the land, the resources, and the people ever since. So when we're talking about the creation story, that is their creation on top of a prior nation or a primitive nation, aboriginal, ab meaning removed, okay, that you were sent away from your position, but you're still the original. The original is still left. So again, we're looking at his story, and the way we look at the Bible is not the way that your mama does. So we call this is not your mama's Bible study. So let's go ahead and look into this. Now it says this Jesus was the son of Sarah. It says Sirach, but again, Sarah can be taken from this but this is our theory. Okay, we're rolling with it. Okay, and our theory is in the 7 days or 6 days. Okay. We were talking about them creating offspring, okay, in a land that people were already in. So when we're so confused about how did Adam and Eve and, if it was just them two, how did they populate? Because they are seeding a nation, flooding a nation, irrigating, penetrating, moving in to grow off of. Do you see what I'm saying? The old people that were here, okay? So that's making sub-races or other races from intertwining with the original peoples, okay? And then some of these people were just coming here, okay? What would make them an immigrant or immigrant with the E or I, okay? Or a native or indigenous. At least natives, though, at least indigenous peoples are offspring of the original. Okay, but a native is not the original, but again, it is the person that is the face of the original, because it's not the original, but you have to really dissect and look behind to see who the originals were. In our case, they fabricated the story of the transatlantic slave trade to make us think we were all from Africa when you are a so-called black person here in America, but it was not true. Most of us, especially if your family has told you something, are the actual Indians that came here, that were here prior to even your natives, okay? Because a Native American is a new person. That's a new race of people, okay? So again, it's not the original. That's the only thing you need to take from it. So when we're looking at this text and we're looking at the Adams family, and we're doing this whole thing on the Adams family in the text, because we like to join his story with the text. Goodness gracious, to bring these things back into perspective. So when we're talking about the 6th day, we could quite possibly be talking about the 1600s. And since one day to us is 1,000 years to God or the government, then you'll see why. And then once you start looking at it this way, you'll see that the government or government acts the same exact way and does some of the same characteristics as God in the Bible. Okay? So we're looking at this and it says this Jesus, meaning that there's multiple Jesuses, but this one was the son of Sarah and the grandchild to Jesus of the same name with him. So when I look at this, it reminds me of something else in the historical text, and it brings me back to the Adams family. Now, I thought we were looking for something to do with Adam, but I feel quite strongly that this Adam, okay, is that portion of the bloodline, okay? But when we start talking about this book in Sarah, we have a Francis Adams that has a mother named Sarah, and he is the grandchild of Francis Adams. You get my drift? Okay. So if we want to look at it like this is what we're doing. We're just looking at the text and we're riding along with it. So this Jesus was the son of Sarah. So we've already documented that in the first part. That Sarah was the name of the child in question in the Adams family named Francis. And Francis, okay, because this is our way of looking at it, is the grandchild to a Jesus or a man, we'll just say, okay. Goodness. And, okay, to Jesus of the same name with him. So that's why I was getting confused when it came to John Adams, because John Adams, there's a long line of Adams. 2 of them were presidents, okay? But I had to look in the background because there's always a backstory. And there's always a there's always a branch that may not be talked about as much because they have been mixed in with the Aborigines. So they want to keep that part silent, okay? So think of it in the way as, have they told us and gave us the perception that these white men were going in with the slaves. But these slaves, if you look at them as Aboriginal people that actually owned land and had power prior to their stuff being manipulated and moved out of their hands and given to the hands of their representative, okay, now, okay, or their guardian now, then if they weren't able to have it, then the guardian was the one. So then it would, the face of that bloodline or that family would be the so-called pure or whiter version. But there's always going to be a darker strip of the genealogy that's less talked about, in my eyes. Okay, so this was the grandchild to the Jesus of the same name of him. So when we're saying this, we're saying that this Francis Adams the third was the grandchild of Francis Adams prior to him. But his dad's name was John Adams. You get my drift? So if he's a third, usually the succession goes that somebody else will be a fourth or a junior or a senior. But in this case, they're saying that his father gave him the name of his grandfather and his uncle. You get my drift? Okay. So so let's read it all together again. This Jesus, and we're going to just replace what we think. This Adams was the son of Sarah. So I had to go back and look at, is there a Sarah Adams? Oh, well, there is. Well, what was her son's name? So I looked up the fact that this person She only had one son, supposedly, with this Adams guy, and his name was Francis. She only had one son with John Adams, and his name was Francis. Put it like that. So I said we might be talking about Francis Adams, okay? And it said he's the grandchild to Jesus or an Adam of the same name. So I thought, damn, I don't have this right because we're looking at John. His dad's name is John, so he would have the same name. But no, he had the same name as his grandfather and his uncle. So this works. And it says, this man therefore lived in the latter times after the people had been led away captive and called home again. Now, whenever we're talking about the people being led away and captive, I automatically go to Exodus because Exodus to me represents the Indian Removal Act that happened in real life here, that's tangible information that you can go and collect, but someone made up a religion and someone to teach you otherwise. So you're thinking we're talking about 500,000 years ago, not that long, but I'm exaggerating. And we're actually you're thinking about the Bible being from 1611, okay? And we're saying that here in America, we didn't get a Bible in English for everyone to be able to obtain until the late 1800s to early 1900s. So who knows in America what could have been in that text prior to. They had a whole bunch of time to add stuff. They had a whole bunch of time to manipulate things. And so this is what we're talking about here today, okay? You didn't get it here, okay? And the fact that the first Bible was in the Algonquin Indian language, and no one can even really find those Bibles anymore or speak the language that's in the book or interpret it, meaning that you would think the natives would be able to, but they're not the original, so no, they cannot, okay? So in this case, it took them this long until the late 1800s to early 1900s after they were able to take all this shit and compile it, put it together, and then give it to you as if it happened so long ago when it may not have, okay? So when I'm looking at Exodus, I'm seeing the the Trail of Tears, okay? And the Indian Removal Act, okay? And then I'm seeing the, I forget what act it was, the Land Something Act, when in 1899, they took and allotted the land that they were supposed to be giving to the natives. So here we go with the natives helping them take over us. And now the natives are in a situation where the government has not kept what they said they would do for them and promised them land for them to deceive or seed or do other things to manipulate the race and the bloodlines of the Aboriginal. Okay? So now that they've used them up and promised them lands, and some of these people also that were taken in this removal act and taken in this Trail of Tears were so-called black people, is what they're calling it in history. But we already know that those are the remnants or some of the Aboriginals as well. Okay? So what I'm thinking happened was when they then had the land grab thing, when all of the foreigners wanted to move west of the Mississippi, or that story sounds familiar in the biblical text too. So when they wanted to move to the other side of the river, then they let them go and take and do ruthless things to the people there in order to obtain that land. And then those people had to then go somewhere else. Do you see what I'm saying? So then now you have to, the people that were there that were being hassled and killed and all these things raped and pillaged by these new foreigners that had the backing of the government or the government, okay? Now you just fend for yourself, or you could go back to where you came from. It doesn't matter because now we need these people to have this land. So that's what I feel like we're talking about in this instance. And this would have been 1866 when this man was doing what he was doing. This Francis III, okay? This Charles Francis III, okay? So it said, now his grandfather, Jesus, or that grandfather of his, which would be Francis Adams, okay, as he himself witnesses, was a great man of great diligence and wisdom among the Hebrews. Now, who are the Hebrews? Are we talking about the real people of the land? Okay? And was that Algonquin text of that first Bible in Hebrew? Okay? This is what you have to ask yourself. Who did not only gather the grave and short sentences of wise men that had been before him, but himself also uttered some of his own, words, full of much understanding and let's
Intelligence
get
and
going.
wisdom among
And wisdom. Okay? When as therefore the first Jesus died. So this his ancestor died. Okay? Or he got dropped. Again, we know there's a form of dying the death. Like the serpent says, you won't die the death. You'll just be like this. So did he die the death or did he die legally? Because he didn't want to go along with what they wanted to do, so he had to be cursed to be down here with us, meaning no breath or no standing in law or no real nationality. Do you see what I'm saying? So this Adams family seemed like they might have dabbled into the Aborigine pool that they were not supposed to dabble into. Okay, and now it says, "Cursed upon the dirt that you came from. Now upon thy belly you'll go." Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm just saying this is kind of like what it reminds me of. So leaving this book, that's for you to judge. Okay. So leaving this book almost perfected, Sarah. Okay. And now it says his son receiving it. And I don't know why they just put Sarah right there. I don't know why. Okay. Because Sarah or Sarah. And then again, okay, we go back to this androgynous thing in my mind really quick. But again, I will have to see why they put Sarah. Okay. And who are we talking about really? Okay. And what are we really talking about? Okay. So his son receiving it after him left it to his own son, Jesus. So after he died, he left it to his own son, Jesus. Now, if this is John Adams, the Quincy Adams, or one of the John Adams's son, okay, then, and it's the one I'm thinking about, which is Francis Adams the third, Charles Francis the third, then you'll see why I'm saying this, okay? Having gotten it into his hands, compiled it in an orderly, all orderly onto one volume and called it Wisdom, entitled it both by his name. So this book that we're looking for, this text that we're looking for, is going to be called Wisdom, but who knows if it's that, okay? And then it says it's entitling it both by his name and his father's name. So this book that we're looking for, and we're looking at it in the historical aspect, that somebody been lying, and you're worshiping and you're looking at the words of the men that came here and stole your shit, then we have to go ahead and look at it like this. So the book is going to have his name and his father's name on it. And it's going to be about the wisdom of these two, or the family line of the writings that have been passed down. Now, we talked about this a little bit in the whole John Adams thing when we were reading about John Adams. We talked about him being a writer and writings that he had. So it says, and his grandfather's. So if his name is the same as his grandfather's name, then of course it's going to have his name too. Okay? Alluring the hearing by the very name of wisdom, to have a greater love to the study of this book. It containeth, therefore, wise sayings, dark sentences, and parables. Again, we're talking in parables because, again, nobody, just like right now, you see some of these people that we, look down on because we found out they are a part of some of these societies. But if you really have your mind straight and you freed your mind from this mass manipulation, then you'll be able to see that although we can't say because we're not there who these people are and what these, just because they're tied to these things that even I once thought they were all evil, doesn't mean that some of these people could not be trying to speak some truth, but they have to speak it in an articulate way or in parables in order for you to understand what they're saying without losing their footing or their platform where they will be able to reach you. So although somebody might have sent them out to deceptively tell you something, they put a little bit of truth in a whole bunch of BS. Okay? You have to be the one to discern what they're saying. Doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to what they say. Doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to their works, because there may be something in there that you can actually use, whether they are intentionally dropping things that they're not supposed to or not. Okay? If you're talking to a whole bunch of people that's not in a better understanding, they're not going to understand anyways. So that's fine. Okay? So let's let them keep thinking that and just take the babies out the bathwater and drain the rest. That's what I do. Okay? But I know that this society has a way of making people that have some truth look evil or look crazy or look some kind of way so that you turn your face on them. So the next things that come out of their mouth, if it's truth, you will just go ahead and dismiss it. See, and that's how people still continue to get tripped up. That's why I like to take a non-biased approach to all of it. Okay? The devil would come to me and say something, and I would ask him, what you really trying to say? Because you have to know, if he's the one working against you, wouldn't you have to know how he playing the game? See, and this is what I'm saying. They got you so afraid. You don't want, oh, I don't want to hear nothing. That got to do with the devil. That got to do. No, that's just whatever got something to do with the devil sometimes. And if these people are saying that he's the bad one, when I haven't seen anything really bad that he did in the Bible, but God is going around doing all this other shit, then I would like to really know what is going on. And I'm going to have to ask that question. And God should be okay with that because he gave me this brain, right, to be able to think this way. Okay? So, again, excuse me, why can't we have a text or a story about that? Okay? So, again, moreover, what benefits God? Okay, let's see. Okay. Also, his prayers and songs, moreover, what benefits God had vouchsafed his people. So, what things God had vouchsafed his people. And since we're talking about this Adams family being introduced into this whole thing within the 6th day, if we're really, because the first God finished all his stuff in the 6th day. People like to use 7, but the text says 6. And he was done in 6 days, but then the 7th day he did something like named it, consecrated and made it holy and all this other stuff. Okay. So again, but his work was already finished then. So again, okay, it's starting to settle down so I don't have to yell and get distracted. So, so these things are what benefits God had vouchsafed for his people. And that sounds like what he wanted to protect for his people at some point in time. And what plagues he had heaped upon their enemies. And again, what are we really talking about here? You know what I'm saying? Are these the plagues that they so-called say that they gave to the natives? But the natives are not the original. But again, what are we really talking about? I would have to go back and look at these plagues and see what terminology we playing with when we're talking about this to see who actually had these plagues. And there's a lot of plagues that so-called white people got too. So I'm just trying to figure out. And then if we're talking about this as something that a plague, the plague would affect everybody unless they had the technology and scientific things in order to manipulate things, okay, in a sense where it would affect only certain people. Okay? So again, what are we really talking about here? Okay? And if God can do everything in this wonders, why won't he just come down here and show himself to us and tell us what we need to do so we don't have to keep going on with this and that? Because the thing is, they do the same thing that the government does, and that's why I know that there's 1 and a 2, and that's why I'm breaking down the fact that these people are probably in this Bible that you're reading, and you think we're talking about some mystical, magical creatures or people. Okay, and we're talking about people that they still have you worshiping in real life when you sending your children to school and you going to these schools learning about this his story that ain't got nothing to do with you, but yours is underlining that. You just have to go back and find it. Okay, so this Jesus did imitate Solomon. Now, again, we know that there's a Solomon, whether it's the last name or first name, that has something to do with these writings, that has something to do with John Adams. So again, that intrigued me. Okay, and was no less famous for wisdom and learning, both being indeed a man of great learning and so reputable also. So now we're going to go ahead and go into what I had in store for you guys. Okay, let's see if we can get the view, bring it, let's zoom in a little bit. It's probably ain't going to let me too much. So this brings me to these works. So there's one called The Works of John Adams. And there's one called The Life and the Works of John Adams, the second president of the United States, with a life of the author, notes and illustrations by his grandson, Charles Francis Adams. Volume 1. Do anybody see where I'm coming from, why I just did that whole long drawn out thing? This is the Charles Francis Adams, that did not have his father's name, but he had the name of his grandfather, which would have been Charles Francis, and he labeled it in all their names, and here you go. Okay? So let's see what some of these things are saying. Appendix, the power of making laws for ordering regulations and internal polity. Oh, I wish I could get this bigger. Of these colonies is within limits of each colony. Okay, so we're talking about some of this stuff. That all statutes for taxing people said colonies are illegal and void. Okay, that all the statutes before mentioned for the purpose of raising revenue. Okay, so courts of admiralty, and again, I always keep telling you guys about this admiralty law in this maritime law. Okay, so declaration as adopted, they are entitled to life, liberty, and property, and they have never ceded. Okay, there we go with that ceded with the C. To any sovereign power, whatever, a right to dispose of each other without their consent. Again, is this some shit we need to dig into? Because we can stay on the Aboriginal thing and just keep sharing pictures and images and different articles and stuff. That's fine and dandy. That brings the beginners in. But then, we can go stay on our bloodline and look at that. But if you stay on your bloodline, that is okay. That's nice. That's dandy. Okay, and I agree with people for doing that. But if you go there and you stay there and you get distracted there, how are you going to free everyone else? See, and that's the thing I'll go to sleep and wake up to is everyone. It ain't no fun if my family can't have none. It ain't no fun if my soul siblings can't have none. So at the end of the day, I am not even thinking about myself. What I'm thinking about looking at this, someone might say, why is she wasting her time looking at the bloodlines of these white people and not her own people? Because these are the people that is naming the stuff. These are the people that have the information that you need to obtain that we all need to dig into so that we can all do it for ourselves, the whole group. Taking a whole bunch of people with you. Just because you can take yourself there and get your paperwork fixed and you're signing up with the same. I think Claude Anderson was talking about how the Indians didn't want to go with everybody else. And this is the mistake that we made. The immigration, what do you call it? When they got us to join the schools with them and things like that. Oh, it's at the tip of my tongue and it's just, I know this is just ridiculous. But I'm trying to get a lot of information in one. But again, they didn't want to integrate. They didn't want to integrate. They wrote up their own stuff, took it to the government and said, this is what they want to do. Okay? We decided just to go on in. And our ancestors, forget that, your ancestors died so you can vote. That's a damn lie. Most of our ancestors didn't want nothing to do with nothing that they had. They needed us to integrate is the reason why they finally made us to integrate. But they gave the little people that's in the lower form of the caste system the perception that it was us fighting against the fact that. But you will always have propaganda with their news that they own and manipulate your mind with. With everything else, you'll always have that thing that will obviously be able to stir up the emotions of the people. Pushing fear antics in the paper to get them to fear certain people so that they can get... like I was telling you about that whole Federalist and that whole Democrat and Republican. See, Democrat and Republican didn't really even come around until the 1800s, maybe 1850s or after. Before that, and like I said, this president, he was a Federalist. He didn't want anything to do with any of those things. So, you know what I'm saying? We have to stop grouping everybody together, and they knew you were going to do that, and then that's why they have these writings here that we should probably be digging into, and we're actually really not. Okay, and it's sad. It's sad. And then everybody's worried about self. And again, you're just taking those papers to the same entity that can do whatever they want to do and manipulate it and still treat you any old kind of way, regardless of what you turn in or not. Again, And people would look at me like I'm crazy because this is the way that I'm studying. But this is two birds with one stone. We can kill that whole religious aspect that is entrapping a lot of our people by proving these things with facts and giving people their own mind to think we're not telling you this is factual. Matter of fact, we're giving them with information that they can use discernment and choose to see what they want to see on their own. Because what little do you know, you've been very indoctrinated and manipulated in these churches over the years. Okay? So, again, let's keep on going. So it says that our ancestors who first settled these colonies were at the time of their immigration from the mother country. Again, from the mother country. When we're talking about leaving, the man should leave his mother and father and cleave onto his wife. This is what we're talking about. Because the wife has something to do, like we said, with just a joining of the two. Okay? So what happened when they came over here and they paid $5 to be Indians? What happened when they came over here and they raped into the Aboriginal woman? What happened when they were breeding and going in with our women? What happened when they brought Africans from Africa and killed off and sent off our men and let the men have their way with some of our women? What happened? Okay? So, entitled to all the rights, liberties, and immunities of free and natural born subjects within the realm of England. So again, although this information may not be pertaining exactly to you, it's telling you what it is, okay? That by such immigration they had no means forfeited, surrendered to be lost of any of the rights, but that they were and their descendants now are entitled to the exercise and enjoyment of all such of them as their local and other circumstances enable them to exercise and enjoy. The foundation of the English liberty and of all free government is the right in the people to participate in their legislative council, and as English colonists are, okay, so this is talking about the English colonists. Okay, now this is something else. Let's see what else we have here. Whereas since the close lost war, the British Parliament claiming a power of, and are we talking about this Parliament and this Brexit and all this stuff right now? The power of the right to bind the people of America by status in all causes whatsoever have in some acts expressly imposed taxes on them and in others under various pretense maybe? It's really small, but in fact for the purpose of raising a revenue have imported rates. Okay, so again, it may not be talking all about you, but then again, it's straight hitting some shit right on the head. So again, are we supposed to be, I mean, you in your spare time, sorry, I don't know what happened. In your spare time, of course, but you should also have to be looking at this. And I think that this whole thing, in order to get us stuck into this thing, and we're just perpetually just bringing around the information over and over again, when we need to be saying, okay, we're Aboriginal, we know that this happened. I'll spit out a little bit of information here and there, but let's dig into this here, okay, and see what we're really talking about, okay? The good people of the colonies justly alarmed, okay? So anyways, like, I think I've already, hit on the notes or whatever that I wanted to basically leave you guys with, okay? Let's see, this is something I'm doing on something else. Oh, okay, this is like something with a seal, okay? Let's see. I think there was some more stuff that I wanted to show you guys when it came to this. Dang it. Oh, maybe this is one. And then I wanted to show you that I think there's a picture of John Adams. And then look at this. I want to know who this is. Okay. Let's see. Wait, Boston Charles C. Little and James Brown. Okay, so these are some people that are of the that had something to do with the book. But again, this is a book about John Adams, so I'm thinking that this must be one of them. And then again, we see this sister in the background right here with this tear of wheat or something in her hand, and something else here. I don't know if it's a torch or if it's a broom, but that was interesting to me. And then what else? Let me see. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we can look through a couple of these. Take them down as we need. Again, that has something to do with something else. Something else. Okay. Okay, the power of making laws and ordering rights. Okay, the colonies. Okay, we already looked at that. Again, I'm putting this up here so you guys can pause it if you want to look deeper into it if you want. That's something else. That the raising or keeping a standing army within these colonies in a time of peace, unless it be consent of the provincial legislature, is illegal. Okay. Okay, this seems like some good stuff. I think. Okay. Oh, this is more about that caste system, and now they call it the caste system of India, but we can just call it the racism problem or the slavery in America if you want to, because this is the high ranked or the four varnas or the four heads that we talk about in this book. Social class includes priests, advisors, and intellectual leaders. Again, the second highest includes the rulers, the military, and the large landowners or slave traders, planters, pilgrims. Well, I don't know about the pilgrims, but you know who I'm talking about. Okay, those who benefited and still are today includes the merchants, the traders, the farmers. Again, these are manufacturers or corporations and companies. Traditionally includes the artists, the laborers, and the servants. And then these are, when we're talking about artisans, we're talking about even like those that have crafty ways of getting to the people and getting in their heads, like your celebrities and your politicians. Well, those would be somewhere within this era, okay? Your presidents, even sometimes. Again, we could probably look at the president or the politics being a little bit up higher, maybe, okay? But again, they have something to do with the military and things like this too, okay? So it says a fifth category includes the lowest status of the person, those outside the caste system. So these will be your Negroes and your Latinos and your poor white regular everyday people that they pit against each other with this whole thing about race and all this other stuff. When it ain't nothing but a race to the top. You see, you way under here. And on the pyramid, the Dalit or the untouchables or undesirables are not even on the pyramid. Okay, so let's see. We already looked at that. Okay, so it says the revolutionary writings of John. So he was revolting against something, okay? Conservatives who are gratified at the success of Donald whatever. Wonderful new biography of John Adams will find even more of the real Adams. Adams Unplugged. That's funny because Unplugged, Unearthed, Unchained. Okay, one might say in the revolutionary writings. Again, now is this how he failed? Is this how Adam failed? I'm just asking a question from the grace. Okay, let's see. Between us taking up the subject, John Adams was aware of his second cousin's role in the group, did not exactly approve. Okay, so somebody's second cousin's role in this approach, and he didn't approve. And again, you can look at this. Benjamin, Benjamin, Isaac, Abraham, Jacob. I'm just saying this, but Solomon. And then the Swan dude. The Swan guy had something to do with also the Indian Removal Act, or either that land grab thing, land rush, or whatever they were calling it too. So it's funny that we're talking about that, and then we're talking about Solomon, and then we're talking about in that biblical, in the book of Sirach or Sarah, we're talking about how um, he had his own way of looking at it too, or whatever. So a letter from John Adams to Tuft, two letters of Solomon Bush, a revolutionary soldier. So I don't know if we're talking about the Revolutionary War or we're talking about, just somebody that was revolting against. Okay, so let's see. I think this has something to do with other stuff. John Adams. These are loose fragments of the journal and the handwritings of John Adams upon scraps of whatever and full stories about Jimmy. I'm wondering if that's the Jeremy or Jeremiah and Solomon. Okay, again, full stories about them. So if this thing contains some kind of stuff, we're just looking at this. Okay, so I don't want to mislead anyone. This is why I choose to just say that do your own research. The works of Adams. Okay, the second president, again, the notes and illustrations by his grandson, again, and he compiled it all together, and here's your volume 1. Okay. I think we already read that. I was looking into this wig party too. But it's just so much. It's just so much to unravel. You know, it's just hard to stay focused, and then you're all over the place, and then you're not getting anything done. And then I thought this was pretty cool right here. Now it says the works of John Adams, compiled by his grandson. Now the Charles Francis, now they keep this name is strong in the family too, but for some reason they don't talk about them as much. And then I'm looking at this whole thing that if this is his family and he compiled this stuff and put it together, and this is an old version of it, then why does he look like this? I've never seen no John. They usually give him like silky hair. So I'm just wondering what was really going on. Okay. This is going to come later when it goes to that. Okay, I think a lot of this stuff just got on here by mistake. But we're just going, this is that land rush thing that I was telling you guys about how they wanted to move into the Indian territory or whatnot. And so that's when a lot of bad stuff was happening to those particular people. This is some more stuff about the Adams family. Okay. And then I noticed too that this goes way back, even back to the 1500s or whatever. But I don't think that they were here in the 1500s. It's somewhere between the 1600s is when that family just started to come here. And then remember, Samuel Adams was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence as well. And he's still selling his ale or his beer, today. So I don't know. Okay, yeah, so this is one that goes back to 55, but I think it even goes back further to just the 1500s of this family. But again, circa, okay. And then we also have to remember, okay, we won't go there. So yeah, let's see, I'm just seeing where he was born. He was born in England, this one, and then he was buried in England, and I think the other one that comes after him was born here in that Braintree, Massachusetts or something, and then they took him back to England to be buried or whatever. So let's see. And then, yeah, we go back even to the 1400s, but again, it's telling me the unknown Adams. So this John Adams name has been having something to do with a lot of things, for a long time. And it's funny how the very way that they have this, they probably have your same information hidden from you as to who your family tree is, but we have to go and have a hard time looking for it. Um, so again, this whole book is about, here's that Jeremiah, okay? And this whole book, like I said, is about what they've done on top of, they're basically telling their story on top of yours without bringing up your portion so that you think that there was no such thing or that you were not here. Again, this is for people that are going to do their own studies. Again, I told you, look at his hair on this one. So what was going on within that family line? There's that Sarah, and then you got Louisa. I think she was the president of John Quincy Adams. I mean, not the president, but the first lady or his wife. Okay. And then here's the third, you know what I'm saying? So, again, when we would get this biblical text, like I said, would be the late 1800s, early 1900s. So that's even pretty funny right there to think, what if? What if this is the way that it is? And what if, do you see what I'm saying? It's just kind of strange. So these are a couple of notes that we use in the first one. Again, it's here for you guys to look at because I don't always be able to get into everything. But I'm just saying, what if all this time the reason why nothing is moving for us is because we've been sitting here worshiping and panting over some words of some people, the very same people that came and entrapped you and enslaved you or used you as indentured slaves and brought other people here in order to till the ground and subdue the earth. And you are the earth when we're talking about the earth, especially in Genesis. When you're talking about the earth, you're talking about the oldest, earliest people. Here's another thing here that I thought was pretty thorough. Okay. Okay. And ain't that funny how he's a yachtsman or a seaman? Fisher, maybe. So yeah, so that's where we are. You guys can continue to look at the book. Let's go ahead and see what they're going to say next.
Sentences and parables, and certain particular by speaking.
Okay. Whereas many and great things have been delivered unto us by the law and prophets, and by others that have followed their steps, for the which things Israel ought to be commanded for learning and wisdom. Okay, and whereof not only the readers must needs become skillful themselves, but also they that desire to learn and be able to profit themselves, which are without both by speaking and writing. My grandfather Jesus. Okay, and again, I just skimmed over that text, and I think we could all really look into this. When he had much given himself to reading the law and the prophets and the older books of our fathers. Again, this, when we talked about the Adams family in that other text, this was stuff that was passed down even from his father. So it's a generational thing that was passed down from that Adams family, which I believe is the Adam family of the Bible, which I believe is, again, so had gotten there on good judgment, was drawn on also himself to write something pertaining to the learning and wisdom and the intent of those. So again, you
and writing.
Looking at this and reading this. The book is there for anyone to look at, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.